So Elvis, Baz Luhrmann. I didn't know until I had read a couple of reviews. Unlike Phil, I will look at stuff after I've watched it before I talk about it because I don't mind getting all that extra information. I figure I'm not going to have anything terribly original to say anyway, so I don't mind cribbing from other people. But I was kind of surprised because I didn't realize, although it made sense, I didn't realize Baz Luhrmann had directed so few films. I guess because of the sort of the
5 or 6, maybe
the,
5 or 6.
the immensity of his directions, I guess, might be one reason why
How
that
many,
was so
Scott?
good. I think it was five regular
Okay.
feature films. What's the one, the Strictly Ballroom, which I have seen a couple times at least. Jackie used to like that movie. Great Gatsby, Moulin Rouge, which I always think of as the one that was his first big one. I remember that kind of caused a storm at the time. I'm not actually looking at the list, believe it or not. Australia, I think.
Oh, is that Ron Howard and Nicole Kidman, or Nicole Kidman and Tom Cruise?
I think she's in it. I haven't seen that one.
Which
Yeah.
one? Oh, the
Australia,
one?
Australia, yeah.
I remember.
No,
And-
I'm thinking of one that Ron Howard made with those two
The race
kids.
car movie, maybe?
I don't know. I can't remember, but I don't
Yeah.
think I know
I
anything.
hear Ron Howard and I blank out.
I mean, we can verify it on IMDb, but I think that might be his full filmography. So, you know, I'm
Romeo
sure
and Juliet.
something might have to. Oh,
Oh.
Romeo and Juliet. Sorry, yeah,
And
Romeo
he
and
did
Juliet
Gatsby.
for sure.
Didn't he do a Gatsby? Was he the one who did a Gatsby?
Yeah, Gatsby, and I mentioned that.
Okay.
Yeah. Gatsby was his previous one, I think 2013 or something. So that's the other thing. There's maybe a long lag time between his movies because they're such expensive spectacles. I don't know.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Anyway, so what do you guys think? I know Phil, you've seen it twice. Stephen, I did read your review online. It was quite positive. I'll open the floor up to either of you if you want to dive in.
Surprisingly positive. As I said, I had absolutely no not an intention. I went and saw it, but I thought I'd hate it.
Why was that? Is it because of Baz Luhrmann or?
Baz Luhrmann, I don't know that I have an opinion on him one way or the other, but Elvis, I don't know if he's still an obsession. I wrote Phil my senior thesis on Elvis.
I know I want to know about that.
I interviewed Grail Marcus. That's the first time I met Grail Marcus. I interviewed him about Elvis.
Okay.
So yes, I've had a long obsession with Elvis, and I think like about anything, you know, I have my version. I don't like other people's versions because I have my version. It's not a unique one. I can find plenty of people who think like I do. And although Colonel Tom has his, I don't know what to call them, proponents, I'm not one of them. I hate that man. I want to know him. My prep for the movie, I actually read a biography of Colonel Tom that was very good. The name of the woman who wrote it, but it was very good. But you know, I didn't like him anymore from reading it. So what got me set against it was it seemed like every week we go to the movies, we see a preview for Elvis, and it looked like it was going to be a movie about Colonel Parker. Tom Hanks was all over the previews, and I mean, he was the most famous guy. I understand as far as that goes, but I did not want to see a movie called Elvis about Tom Parker. And that's what I thought I was going to see. So the first thing that I was happy about was that he doesn't come across very well in that movie. I think that Baz Luhrmann may agree with me about the influence that the Colonel had on Elvis, and it wasn't good. At least that's how I took it. So that was that was a sigh of relief right there before anything else happened.
So
I was almost going to break in there, Stephen. One of my main complaints about this film, and I'm kind of half and half, is way too much Colonel Tom Parker, way too much Tom Hanks.
Well, I mean, I agree, except for imagine, what was it, 2 hours and whatever. I thought that 2 hours is going to be Tom Hanks, and then the Elvis would pop in once in a while. So I was very happy.
Well, maybe it's the expectations. Maybe
yes,
maybe Stephen was expecting.
You're right.
To be more so. I thought the
Because
Tom
that
Hanks.
story, the story of Elvis was made by the Colonel. It's not. It's been discredited. I don't think anybody exactly believes it, but uh, had a feel for it. I thought in the trailers, and uh, that's why I was reticent to go for it. And I should then add because there's that part, but then once the Austin, I don't have my reading glasses on. The guy
I
plays
have the
Elvis.
same right here. Hold on.
Austin Butler.
Yes, Austin
Austin
Butler.
Butler, yes.
Yep, Austin Butler.
Well, I thought he was amazing. Uh, I think that Elvis is both the easiest and the hardest person to be. I mean, I could do an Elvis. Who can't do an Elvis imitation? But to get beyond that, well, there've been some good ones, some bad ones. My favorite is I don't know if you know the movie that Bruce Campbell and
Yeah,
Ossie
I
Davis
know that
made.
one. Yeah.
Where Bruce Campbell was the living Elvis, he was replaced by whatever. But I recommend, by the way, and well, I'm not remembering the name of the movie, but if you watch the DVD, Bruce Campbell does the commentary as Elvis. It's pretty hilarious. Anyway, I believe this actor from the start. He did have all the mannerisms down, but again, that's the easy part. Uh, I couldn't always tell when it was him singing because I guess some of it was him and some of it was Elvis, and I'd be surprised if that's possible. I've seen some good Elvises where the singing wasn't the part that worked. I thought it worked here, and so I had nothing but good things to say about him. Was it the greatest movie of all time? No, because Elvis contains multitudes, and I don't know how they could get it all in there. And there was some things I felt that they were. Let's make sure we mention race, or let's make sure we mention this or that. But then they just mentioned it. So if someone asks, "What about Elvis and black people?" Well, we had that scene. I don't think that it was, and then it would have been a 6-hour miniseries if we'd gone through all that.
Okay, I'll just before I get into specifics, we'll want to hear from Scott. I'll just say I'm half and half on the film. I liked half of it. I have things that I'll talk about later, what I didn't like. So how about you, Scott, overall?
Overall, I liked it. I'd really like to see it again. I felt the early parts of the movie were really, really strong, and then I thought the last sort of I'd say the last part in terms of the performances, it got a little bit into I don't know, the gooey stuff a little bit at the end or something. But when I thought, like, for instance, the Vegas stuff and the stuff in the studio around that time was really interesting, really well done. No, I felt very good. I really quite liked it. I did feel a little bit when I left the theater, and I think this is maybe common with Baz Luhrmann movies, and I may have felt it a little bit the first time I saw Gatsby, though not the second time, is that I couldn't deny the awesomeness of the spectacle, and I have no qualms with that. If a spectacle is done really well and is just great to look at on the screen, I'm fully there with it. I have no issue with that. But I felt there was a little bit of emotional lacking, I would say. But then I found that the movie was kind of coming back to me a little bit. Talking about Elvis now, it was sort of coming back to me in pieces, and I thought, yeah, I want to see it again because I feel like I didn't catch everything in there. I want to sort of see how he handled that part. So I mean, I thought it was quite good. And I'll just say quickly about the Tom Hanks thing. And I mean, I'm sort of a little half and half on that because I didn't really love watching him that much when he was on screen. As a device, I thought it was kind of interesting, and I actually do have a little bit of a theory about it. And I don't know if this makes sense, but by giving someone like Hanks, who clearly, I agree with Stephen, that I don't think Baz Luhrmann is any big fan of Colonel Tom, but by putting sort of the narrative into someone's hands like that, it lets a character like Elvis play off it and become a really awe-inducing figure without having to act like an awe-inducing figure and say all
Mhm.
sorts of like really great things that you're going to pat him on the back for. Like it's almost like when you put something negative in front of you, then the positive can kind of just bounce off and not have to do so in a really obvious way. Like that's what I kind of liked a little bit about Austin Butler. When I did like him, he didn't have to sort of do much. It was kind of his subtle reactions to Colonel Tom Parker I thought were very effective. So
I think it was especially effective, maybe even not the first time, but when he's on stage and he's going to be good this time. And then he says, I'm going to be me. And then he isn't good. That's when they have the riot and the parents have to leave and everything. And I thought that worked well, partly because maybe what you just said, it's like Elvis had that mama's boy thing in him, and he thought he's just going to be a good kid now. He understands. But he was also Elvis. And in that transformation, yeah, I think that it helped that up until the moment he does that, he does seem like he's kind of flattened himself out. And then, nope.
Let me talk about some things that I liked, and you guys could bounce off this. So musically, I mean, I'm sure we all like certain things more than others in it. The two songs I'll single out that I thought were really well done would be early Baby Let's Play House, where I think he sent all those, for the first time, sent the audience into a frenzy. I thought, and I assume Austin Butler's doing the singing, right?
yeah, I think he is. Yeah.
I think he starts doing it, and then maybe later they use
later. There are a couple of times where I think they slip into the actual song,
and I like the way they did that. By the way, I like the way they leave that stuff in and out. So
I thought that was really good. And then later, I thought the highlight was the first time, or maybe the only time in the movie, he plays Suspicious Minds, which I think is his Las Vegas debut. And they stretch it out, and he does this kind of code at the end where each time, that was really good. And the third thing, musically related, I thought it was really nice after all the Baz Luhrmann and all this stuff, the spectacle and all that, to end within the ghetto. I thought that was a really nice, quiet way to end it. Performances, I liked Austin Butler, of course. Whatever misgivings I have about the film, at every step, I thought he was giving it his all and couldn't find fault. I thought the actress, I've got her name here, Olivia DeJonge, was good as Priscilla. Thought she just, she didn't have a huge role, but I thought she was very good. The guy that played Little Richard, who apparently is a male model, Alton Mason, was great.
Yeah, that's great.
Of all the recreations, I mean, a couple of them were kind of nothing. Fats Domino and B.B. King, the way they were portrayed, they didn't have a lot of personality, but I thought he really did a great job as Little Richard. And I like the guy that played Steve Binder, the director of the. He reminded me of somebody else. I don't know.
He'd be my hero if I made the movie, not Tom Parker.
What's that?
He'd be my hero if I made the movie.
I figured he'd be one of your heroes because I know what you think of the special. The actor's name is it's weird, Dacre, Dacre or Dacre Montgomery. And something else I liked, and I read this in a review, it was a good idea to take all those 60s movies and condense them into one sequence, done as one of those films themselves. That was nice. And the other thing, last thing I liked, the Elvis collage at the end, where you finally got to see the real Elvis. And you guys can tell me if I'm right here. I think when he was doing, I think it starts with Austin Butler doing Unchained Melody, but right near the end, do they not transition?
Elvis.
Yeah, but they look so much alike. I wasn't sure of that. So, okay. So those were the things I liked. You want to add some of your own?
Well, you inspired me to think about specific musical parts of the movie. And I thought I was close enough in getting the facts right. It wasn't always perfect, but what movie is? But there were 3 times when I thought I got it perfect in terms of recreating a moment. And the first, second, but you mentioned Suspicious Minds and the whole production of that. It wasn't a complete copy, but if you go out and find Elvis the Way It Is, or whichever one of the movie is, they got it. That wasn't just he was being Elvis. The whole way that song was presented at that time, it's on film, so you can look at it. And so that was an accurate representation. Before that, as you mentioned a little bit ago, to me, the '68 special is the greatest moment in pop music history. So I was very glad they didn't actually have a whole lot about the actual music. They had the things, the setups, and all that. But what they did, it was accurate. If you watch the footage of that show, it matched pretty well, and I would have been bothered if it didn't for whatever reason. Finally, you also mentioned the Unchained Melody, and that was the one time in the movie, which seems at the end, it was okay, I guess, where I just, got a little allergies going in the back of the theater because that performance of Elvis, I think he dies a couple of weeks later in real life. And it's so Elvis, it's so phenomenal in that way that he's either great or awful, but he's never in between. One time I had played that in the car and my wife's driving and she says, "This is the worst version of this song I've ever heard." And then another time I have that song going and she's like, "This is a great version of this song." And that sums it up.
That's Elvis, yeah.
And I like that they moved to the real Elvis at the end because what's going on there, he's he shit in his pants for all we know. He couldn't do anything by the end, but he sits there to sing that song, and he's going for it. You got somebody in the back that could hit the high note for him. He doesn't make it. You don't know if he's going to pass out and die right there on the stage. But if you look at his face, you can see that he knows he's getting it, and probably doesn't get it anymore. And he's going at it. And at one point, right near the end, he looks over at somebody, and he got a smile on his face and nods his head like, "I got this," and that he's going to hit the high note. And he does. I love that they put that in the movie because it's one of my favorite moments in general. All of those things, I like the recreations that they had. I don't know what it was like in the Sun Studios because there's no footage, but of those things that were there, yeah, I thought they did great with those things, and they were things I was looking forward to. So maybe that's one of the reasons I liked it.
It's funny, Stephen, that you mentioned a couple of times. This ties in with the whole, biopic notion or whatever. But you mentioned the word accurate a couple times. Mm-hmm. And I think that's an interesting word in relation to this movie because some of the music moments that really stuck out for me, I can think of one in particular right now, is fairly early in the movie. I think it's the first real time in the movie you hear "That's All Right, Mama." But It's definitely a recreation. It's got a hip hop beat. It's slowed down to about half time of what the song is. And I was just completely blown away by that. And I think when Baz Luhrmann does that stuff, he does it really, really well. I think that's what some people maybe don't like about his movies. But there's a great moment like that in The Great Gatsby as well, where there's just a very brief scene and Gatsby and the rest are driving in their expensive car down the road or whatever. And I think it's Jay-Z song comes on and one of them starts standing up in the car and singing along. And it's just like, it's perfect. Like, it doesn't matter that, Jay-Z wasn't there during the Great Depression. It just works so perfectly. And I love the "That's All Right, Mama." Like, actually, I don't think they put it on the soundtrack because I've been listening to the soundtrack a little bit.
The scene you're talking about, Scott, I think it's where Hank Snow's son brings the record.
Yep, I think that sounds right.
Throws it on to get everybody else interested.
And then it's really slow, like a sort of hip hop beat.
Yeah.
And so
I think that one of the I say it's a problem is like with the "That's All Right, Mama." It's and B.B. King and Little Richard and the rest. This is the movie saying, look, this is Elvis's milieu when he grew up. This music was part of him, just like country music was. He wasn't ripping off nothing. That's the point of view of the movie, and they could have done more with that, or they could have gone the opposite, just say Elvis was a hero to most, but didn't mean shit to me. They didn't. They just put those scenes into us three would say, "Oh yeah, they did that. They had "That's All Right, Mama," whatever." I taught entire courses on Hound Dog. I mean, these are complicated issues. In the movie, they weren't, and the fact that I agreed with their take for the most part doesn't hide the fact that they went through that way too fast. It's like, yeah, me and BB are friends. Oh, okay, whatever.
Yeah, I think I was kind of drawing a comparison in some ways with this movie, even though we're talking about a biopic and a documentary. And I find more and more I'm getting those two genres mixed up because I think they're actually melding a little bit more as time goes on. But I do compare it a little bit to the Todd Haynes Velvet Underground movie. And if, I think in some ways, a very sort of similar criticism I have of the two films, and I love the Todd Haynes unreservedly, and I think I might be there with this one as well. But I do think they both bit off. I wouldn't say more than they could chew, but maybe more than they should have. Like it's it's a second guessing the director, which is pointless. But I think Baz Luhrmann could have made an absolutely phenomenal 90-minute movie sticking to Elvis in the 50s. Like I thought the 50s stuff was so strong. Like I thought the Louisiana hayride scene, I think it was just amazing. He didn't over dramatize it. He dramatizes it because it was a dramatic moment. But I love the way, just even the crowd when Elvis first appears on stage are just kind of sitting there. They're not like in awe of him or anything like that. They're just like, here's this guy or whatever, and he really has to win them over, and then sort of pandemonium takes over. And it whether it happened like that or not, it just felt emotionally very right. But to draw the comparison to the Todd Haynes movie, I'm not the only person to have said this. I just felt he kind of lost interest in the story after White Light, White Heat, and I actually think that would have been a much. I don't think he would have gotten funding for such a movie, so I think that's why he had to cover the whole story. But I think his real interest in that was when the Velvet Underground were an art band with Lou Reed and John Cale and Nico. And once that story changed, I mean, the third album, I guess, is too. But even by then, I just didn't feel as a movie. Like that movie, in my opinion, should have ended with Sister Ray, and the Elvis movie would have been great if it ended with Elvis being inducted into the army. I couldn't remember what year. What year did Elvis get inducted? Was it 59 or something?
I think. 59.
Yeah, okay. To me, that would have been a fantastic ending. Make a great movie about Elvis, and then the final scene, he gets his draft card in the mail or something. So.
There was a TV series, and I forget who played Elvis. So I think his name was Michaels.
Marcus loves that.
Yes. Anyway, it was a TV series. As far as I can remember, they never got out of the 50s. So maybe
so it's already so it's been done. Yeah.
Okay. Can I jump in here because the stuff that Scott's praising is exactly some of the stuff I did not like at all. I thought there was, and I know how important the comeback special is, and I know how important it is to you, Stephen. I thought there was too much on the comeback special. Too much on Decline, not nearly enough time on Sun Records, which is one of the most fascinating things about the Elvis story to me, like Sam Phillips, and that's dispensed with in like a 1-minute scene.
Is it not really just 1 minute?
Yeah, seriously. I mean, okay. I'm talking about Sam Phillips actually on
like screen. Right in the studio. Yeah. Okay.
1 minute. And the thing at the film, I think I don't know if I want to say fails because I've already praised one scene having to do with this, but I think really misses the mark is the impact that Elvis had in 57 and 58. It doesn't really convey that. And I'm going to go to a couple of documentaries too, so I'm glad you brought that up, Scott. When I watched the Scorsese Dylan film, No Direction Home, even though it was probably a lot more Dylan than Scorsese, or even when I watched the Warhol PBS thing, I come out of those with a clear sense of how these two people just turned the world upside down. One scene of Baby Let's Play House and those, all the women going crazy. And then the scene where, he comes out and they want him to tone it down and he sings Trouble and he won't tone it down. And the Steve Allen scene. That's it for 57, 58. And I know he's not making a 6-hour movie, but I just think he just did not convey that, especially for someone like me, who was born slightly after. I've managed to convey my own sense of how monumental his arrival was. When I was first exposed to Elvis, it was Burning Love, which is I liked everything on the radio in 1972. I really didn't care for Burning Love. And then there was the campy Elvis. But then I got the Sun Sessions, actually partly because of this book, which I put aside. And then I got it, but I just don't think this film does a good job on that. I don't think anybody that doesn't someone like Steven that was there and knows that story, if somebody comes to this, some younger person, they get the spectacle, and they get a couple memorable scenes, but I don't think he got the scope of 57, 58 at all.
I'll go one further than you while still disagreeing with you, though, because like you can even take your argument one step further. And I didn't even think about this until someone pointed it out. I think I listened to a podcast review of it. He doesn't, I think he maybe only even mentions they don't show Ed Sullivan. But
right,
that in some ways could be called the monumental moment in 50s American. But I don't know. I'm sort of okay with that in a way because I think the story has been told so often. So he's looking for the different parts of the story. I don't think it's Baz Luhrmann's job or even his duty to like sort of convince younger people of what you need to go.
His own film, I know.
But also, it is interesting though. Like, and I just thought of this when you were mentioning that about how you don't really see the impact. One thing that's kind of interesting about the movie is it's very like, call it localized. Like he doesn't show the mass media impact in many ways. Like when you talk about seeing the Warhol film and stuff, I assume you kind of get like a bigger. I mean, first of all, that's a documentary too, but I'm sure you get kind of like the bigger frame and the impact. I notice you don't really see a lot of stuff in this movie that kind of do show what's happening, like beyond Elvis's little scene himself. So you'll see pandemonium at a concert, but it then doesn't cut away to like people screaming around the world and stuff. I don't have a problem with that because in some way I don't know, like I just think he's eschewing some of the conventions of the biopic, and
I don't want a collage of screaming teenagers.
I know.
When I say I want to know about his impact on the culture, I want it done imaginatively and creatively,
right? Sure,
in a way that maybe hasn't been done before. And someone might say that that's what this film does. I don't think it does.
I wonder if part of it being the subject matter, that there was an assumption we don't have to do context, we don't have to do anything. Everybody already knows Elvis. He's the biggest pop star of all time. So we can skip all that.
That's absolutely true. And the one place I most clearly encountered that approach to a film was the Scorsese documentary on George Harrison, where he gave you almost nothing about. He just took for granted that you knew every last fact about the Beatles, and he did stuff out of order, and there was no context for any of it. So yes, he might have said that. I just feel that I don't know. I'm asking for conventionality here. I wanted to know something about just that moment, 57, 58, and I definitely wanted to know. To me, Sun Records. It's just that you've got Elvis and Johnny Cash and Jerry Lee Lewis and Carl Perkins in this building. One of the greatest stories ever. And he paid it lip service. I have more complaints.
I guess I just didn't feel its absence didn't bother me.
Oh,
if it had been handled badly, then I would have had a bigger issue. I mean, it's a point well taken. I just think maybe he was looking for slightly different places to tell the story. Like focusing so much on Louisiana Hayride, which was a big deal, but nothing on Ed Sullivan. Like who outside of outside of the people who attended Louisiana Hayride? And then of course it became part of the legend and everything. Whereas anyone who grew up in the 50s, they can probably tell you where they were when they saw Elvis on Ed Sullivan. Like
one sign of what they were up to. I don't know what it means, but you're right. Ed Sullivan's not there, but Steve Allen is.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And
Milton Berle. Yeah.
That he humiliated Elvis, made him sing to the dog, and I watched it. I'm not sure. Elvis seems to be having an okay time, but in real life, I mean, but. For some reason they decided that the Steve Allen scene was the way to show Elvis on TV or something, and they need Ed Sullivan. It's certainly a different kind of performance. I don't know why they would do that. I'd like to see some Ed Sullivan too,
Well, I mean, I took it as the way to show, what he was kind of up against. I mean, but anyway.
Let me say a couple of things having to do with Tom Hanks. So this is just bizarre to me. The accent. I went online tonight, and you'll probably want to watch this, Stephen, even though you hate Colonel Tom Parker. I guess, or not I guess, I watched it. Ted Koppel had him on for an episode of Nightline, so you get a long interview. I wanted to check out Tom Parker's voice. It's exactly what I thought it would be. It's like a Southern accent. Why did Tom Hanks feel he had to adopt this completely ridiculous accent?
But Colonel Tom isn't from the South, though, right?
Whether he's from the South or not,
he spoke in that accent. Really,
that's how he talked.
Interesting.
I will say that in the biography of Colonel Tom, regularly we are told that he has an odd accent.
I didn't detect this from the Nightline episode.
Yeah.
I don't know. And the other thing I wanted to ask you guys about and I didn't like this at all, the whole snowman concept, that we're just hucksters. I want to know, what is the relationship? Okay, Tom Parker obviously believes that. Elvis, you assume, does not believe that, and yet Elvis jokes along with him about that. And what does Baz Luhrmann think about it? I would hope clearly he doesn't believe that. It just he gave so much attention to that idea. We're gonna make it snow. I'm the snowman. I'm gonna snow the audience. I never was clear on what, again, performer, manager, and director thought about that.
Well, I mean, isn't it just kind of like the bait that Colonel Tom keeps relying on to keep kind of Elvis like in thrall or under his wing? I mean, I don't like if Elvis didn't believe it, though, I don't think he would have like just necessarily come right out and say like you're full of shit. Like Elvis was a young kid. He, Colonel Tom was seasoned con man or whatever. Like I don't.
So he actually believes it, right, Colonel?
Well, I don't know, but I don't think maybe he's necessarily making a comment on it, like good or bad. Like it just, okay. I don't know. I don't like.
For me, from my bias, pro Elvis, it's one of the places where when you get together with the other Elvis fans, you have to admit it's not just that Colonel Tom fucked up his career in the '60s, but Elvis went along with it. Elvis made those movies. He didn't want to make them, but he did anyway. He didn't like them. He made them. He didn't want to make crappy records. He did anyway. One of the reasons that the '68 special is so great is because him and Bender finally say, hell no, we're going to do it our way. But what took him so long? You got to ask. And I don't know the answer. The answer is that for all our attempts to make Elvis into a conscious artist driven from his own thing, well, it doesn't fit with the part where he made all those movies and did what Colonel told him to do. So in the movie, I think the Colonel, if he believes anything, he probably believes that snow crap. But Elvis, his daddy wasn't very good, but Colonel Tom was a better daddy than his own. I don't know.
I'm just intrigued because it was brought up so often in the film.
It was a little bit annoying in the movie. I will give you that for sure.
The next complaint, my last one, and I make the same complaint. I think I made the same complaint 3 of our Zooms in a row. I think I made it about the polystyrene film. I think I made it about the Velvet Underground film. It's just something with me. I want everything. I wanted some more context. Like, where are the Beatles? They show up in one shot. You see them in one shot. Where's Bob Dylan? Nothing. But Dylan always said his favorite cover was Elvis's cover of Tomorrow's a Long Time. Where's Chuck Berry? We had a little bit of Fats Domino 10 years after the fact. We get Little Richard. That's good. Where's Chuck Berry? Like, Chuck Berry to me is central to that because, Elvis is basically Sam Phillips' answer to have a white Chuck Berry, right? He wants all of Chuck Berry's talent, brilliance, and genius, but he wants the singer to be white.
I'd say that you're right about Sam Phillips. Except Chuck Berry comes a little bit after. He's the Elvis the blues guys he had. He had Howlin' Wolf and Son Records, people like that. I think
Yeah.
he was thinking more of that. Chuck Berry comes a little bit later, as far as that goes. But again, the context, the movie, even though I've worried about it from the previous, the movie's called Elvis.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, I'm interested in the context as well. I'm interested in all the things that you guys have brought up. But it's a movie called Elvis. I want to see a movie about Elvis. And
I
yes,
think again, I think of the Dylan and Warhol biography, though, the two or documentaries. It just bring in everything. I love that.
But I get it's funny because I feel like I've gone in the opposite direction as I've gotten a little older, and I'm quite sincere about this. Like I admire any like director or artist or whatever who can do something really effective and sort of keep the scope smaller.
Okay.
I just find throwing and you know what, it sort of reflects like my own flaw as like a writer or anything I do creative. I always want to throw every single thing in and think that you can't miss this, you can't miss this. And as I've gotten older, I've realized, man, that is a flaw, and it's really hard to back away from that. So the absence, I don't know. I mean, if he could have done it well, then sure, if it would have. But the idea of throwing in the Beatles and Dylan to me just seems like I never felt the movie. I feel like we're just maybe looking for something different in the movie. I just wanted like
I mean, if it's poorly,
a story about Elvis told, and he could have done it like in any way he wanted, where he didn't even have music, and he could have told an interesting story if he had chosen to do it that way.
just so I clarify, when I say that, I want it done well.
No, and of course, I understand that.
Poorly,
I know you don't want a cliched version or something.
Yeah. Let's just stick in a scene with Chuck Berry. I don't want that. I want it done well.
But I think I respond more positively as I get older when someone can make a movie like that and actually leave a lot. I remember having this argument with a friend who didn't like the Velvet Underground documentary, and he was raising all these things like, well, this is a documentary. Why didn't he go into this? And I want to know what the fallout was with Nico and blah, 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 blah. And my attitude was, someone else can do that. Like, he had a story to tell, and he wanted to focus on the art scene of New York as the backdrop, and you know, tied in with the music. And he would have made his film more flawed if he had tried to pull all this other stuff in, because that wasn't the story he wanted to tell. Not that some people can't do that, but
one thing he left out, and I'll give him credit, I would not have wanted 10 minutes on Elvis and Nixon and the drug enforcement.
By the way, did you see that movie? Did you see Elvis?
No, I never did see it.
It's pretty good, actually. You know,
I should really, but
it's not a great movie. But I saw it on an airplane, and it's actually pretty good. So
okay.
I was surprised. I was actually surprised it was okay. It wasn't amazing.
We're down to a minute. Sorry for all the complaining.
No, it's good. It's good.
Out because I remembered the name of the Bruce Campbell movie, Bubba Hotep.
Yes, I do know.
And I highly recommend watching it with Bruce Campbell's Elvis commentary.
It would be amazing. Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. I'm just going to
I'll say real quick. It'd be amazing for someone to do a comparison of all the Elvises in different Elvises in movies. But
that's what I was going to ask. Have either of you guys seen the John Carpenter, Kurt Russell Elvis TV?
No, I want to though. I want to. I know Marcus loves that one. I think.
Yeah, I saw it long ago. Don't remember it. Okay, so that was good. It was very enlightening.